Welcome to my channel Echoes of Coin. Most people glance at pennies and see just 1 cent. But hidden in the 1981, 1982, 1984, 1988, and 1989 issues are secrets worth far more than their face value. Rare errors, hidden varieties, and shocking transitions turned these ordinary coins into treasures collectors fight to own. The question is, do you have one of these valuable pennies hiding in your change right now? The 1 cent coin of 1981 holds a special place in the long history of American coinage, not only because it was among the last years of the traditional bronze composition, but also because it reflects the economic conditions, minting practices, design changes, and collector interest of the early 1980s. When looking at a 1981 penny, most people see just a small piece of copper-colored metal with the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, but numismatists, historians, and everyday coin enthusiasts recognize that there is a much deeper story to be told. Understanding the 1981 Lincoln cent requires exploring its design origins, production history, mint marks, varieties, mintage totals, condition rarities, errors, and the broader economic and cultural context in which it was produced. The design of the 1981 cent traces back to 1909, when the United States Mint introduced the Lincoln cent to mark the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Sculptor Victor David Brenner created the obverse portrait, and over the decades it became one of the most iconic and enduring designs in American coinage. By 1981, the obverse had been in continuous use for more than 70 years, though it had undergone subtle modifications as dies were reworked and engraving techniques evolved. The obverse shows Lincoln facing right, with the word liberty to his left and the date 1981 to his right. Above his head arcs the motto "I in God we trust." This portrait captures Lincoln in a dignified profile, symbolizing both his enduring legacy and the nation's respect for him. Collectors often notice that different years and even different mints can show slight differences in Lincoln's hair detail, facial features, or the sharpness of the lettering, and the 1981 cents are no exception. The reverse of the coin in 1981 still displayed the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Designed by Frank Gasparo, the reverse features a detailed rendition of the Washington, D.C. Memorial, with the words United States of America above, E pluribus unum centered just above the monument, and the denomination 1 cent below. Interestingly, if one looks closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the coin, a small seated statue of Lincoln can be seen between the columns, making the Lincoln cent a coin with both an obverse and reverse depiction of the president. The fine detail of the memorial can be crisp and sharp on well-struck examples, but on worn pieces or those struck from aging dies, the details may blur. Collectors often evaluate the strength of strike when grading 1981 cents, as it affects both beauty and value. The composition of the 1981 penny is another vital aspect. For decades, Lincoln cents had been composed primarily of bronze, an alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This composition had been standard since 1909, except during World War II in 1943, when steel cents were produced due to wartime copper shortages. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, however, the rising price of copper meant that the metal content of each cent was approaching, and in some cases exceeding, its face value. The U.S. Mint faced increasing pressure to find a more cost-effective composition. In 1982, the mint would transition to copper-plated zinc cents, which remain in use today. Thus, the 1981 penny represents the final full year in which all circulating 1 cent coins were made of the traditional bronze alloy. For many collectors, this makes 1981 a nostalgic year, marking the end of an era. Mintage numbers for the 1981 Lincoln cent were extremely high, reflecting the coin's role as the backbone of everyday commerce in the United States. Billions of cents were struck across multiple mint facilities: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, D; and San Francisco, S. The Philadelphia Mint struck the highest number, while Denver also contributed heavily. The San Francisco Mint produced proof coins for collectors, struck with specially prepared dies and highly polished planchets to achieve mirror-like fields and frosted designs. These proof cents from 1981 are sought after by numismatists, especially in pristine condition. Because of such massive production, most 1981 cents are common in circulated grades, but condition plays a critical role in determining value. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 1981 Lincoln cent lies in its varieties. During this year, the mint was using two different styles of lettering for the obverse, a Type 1 and a Type 2. This difference is most notable in the mint mark on proof coins struck at San Francisco. In the Type 1 proof cents, the S mint mark appears with a somewhat filled or blob-like appearance, while the Type 2 variety shows a clearer, sharper S with more defined serifs. Collectors prize the Type 2 proof cents as scarcer and more desirable. On business strikes, subtle differences in die characteristics can also be found, and specialists in Lincoln cents often catalog and study such varieties. These distinctions may seem small, but they carry weight in the numismatic community and contribute to the depth of study around the series. Errors are another area of great interest for collectors of the 1981 penny. Like all mass-produced coins, the 1981 cent was vulnerable to striking mistakes, die imperfections, and planchet flaws. Errors such as double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and brockages can be found among 1981 cents. Double die obverse or reverses, where design elements appear duplicated due to misalignment during the die-making process, are particularly popular. While most 1981 cents are worth only face value in circulated condition, a dramatic mint error can increase the coin's value significantly, sometimes into the hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on rarity and demand. Collectors frequently search through rolls of 1981 cents in hopes of discovering such treasures. Grading and condition are critical factors in assessing the value of 1981 cents. Coins that have circulated heavily often show significant wear. Lincoln's hair and cheek will be smooth, the lettering less sharp, and the reverse details of the Lincoln Memorial worn down. Uncirculated examples, however, retain their mint luster and sharp details, and those graded by professional services as MS65 or higher are especially desirable. Red coloration is another key element. Copper coins tone over time, turning brown as the surface reacts with the environment. Collectors distinguish between brown, BN, red-brown, RB, and full red, RD designations, with full red uncirculated cents being the most valuable. Because copper is reactive, finding and preserving a brilliant red 1981 cent is challenging, which adds to its allure. From a historical perspective, the 1981 cent also reflects broader economic and cultural conditions in the United States. Inflation was a pressing issue in the late 1970s and early 1980s, and the purchasing power of the penny was diminishing. The cost of copper itself was climbing, putting pressure on the mint's production costs. At the same time, the Lincoln cent remained a deeply familiar part of American life, circulating in vast numbers and serving as a constant reminder of the nation's 16th president. For many Americans, pennies were the first coins they handled as children, used in piggy banks, allowance, and candy purchases. The 1981 cent thus connects both to personal memories and national identity. The 1-cent coin of 1982 stands out as one of the most fascinating years in the long history of the Lincoln cent, not because of a single rare error or small design modification, but because it represents a true turning point in United States coinage. In 1982, the U.S. Mint made a major shift in the composition of the penny, and as a result, there are more varieties of the 1982 Lincoln cent than in almost any other single year. For collectors, historians, and everyday enthusiasts, the 1982 penny is a coin that blends tradition with transition, and it captures a moment when economic realities forced changes in a denomination that had otherwise remained visually stable for decades. Understanding the 1982 cent requires careful exploration of its design, composition, mint marks, varieties, mintage totals, errors, grading standards, and cultural significance, all of which make this coin one of the most studied in the modern series. The design of the 1982 penny is the same familiar Lincoln cent design that Americans had known for generations. On the obverse, the portrait of Abraham Lincoln created by Victor David Brenner remains, a right-facing bust of the nation's 16th president, accompanied by the motto "I in God We Trust" arching above his head, the word liberty positioned to his left, and the date 1982 to his right. For coins struck at the Denver Mint, the small D mint mark appears below the date. The obverse design had already been in use for more than 70 years by 1982, a remarkable testament to its enduring popularity and suitability. Subtle differences in engraving, die wear, and minting technology over the decades had caused slight stylistic changes, but Lincoln's dignified profile remained essentially unchanged. The obverse of the 1982 cent is a study in both tradition and consistency, showing how a single image can carry deep national meaning through multiple generations. The reverse of the 1982 cent continues to display Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design, which had been introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The memorial is shown with remarkable architectural detail, including its columns, steps, and roofline. Above the memorial, the words United States of America appear boldly, with the Latin motto E pluribus unum just below. At the bottom, the denomination 1 cent is written in large letters, affirming the value of the coin. A close inspection of the reverse reveals a small but significant detail: the tiny figure of Lincoln seated in the memorial. This makes the Lincoln cent unique in that it depicts the same individual on both sides of the coin. Collectors often point out this dual representation as a feature that distinguishes the cent from all other U.S. coinage. While the design remained constant in 1982, the composition of the coin underwent a historic transformation. For decades, the cent had been struck in a bronze alloy composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. However, by the late 1970s and early 1980s, the rising price of copper meant that the metal content of a penny was approaching, and in some cases exceeding, its face value. Producing pennies had become a losing proposition for the U.S. Mint, and a cheaper alternative was urgently needed. After years of study and experimentation, the Mint settled on a new composition: a core of 99.2% zinc with a thin outer plating of pure copper. The new copper-plated zinc cents looked almost identical to the older bronze cents, but they were far less costly to produce. In 1982, both bronze and copper-plated zinc cents were struck, making it a transitional year in which two different compositions circulated simultaneously. This duality is one of the main reasons why 1982 is such a complex and fascinating year for collectors. The change in composition was not the only major variety to appear in 1982. That year also saw differences in the size of the date lettering. Early in the year, the Mint used what is called the large date style, in which the numbers are thicker and the 2 has a more rounded curve. Later in the year, the Mint adopted a small date style, with thinner numerals and a 2 that has a sharper, more delicate curve. These differences may seem minor to casual observers, but to coin specialists, they create important and distinct varieties. When the factors of composition, bronze versus zinc, and date style, large versus small, are combined with mint mark differences, Philadelphia versus Denver, the result is an unusually large number of varieties for a single year. In total, there are 7 recognized major varieties of the 1982 Lincoln cent, making it one of the most complex years in the entire series. The recognized varieties of the 1982 cent are as follows: 1982 large date bronze, Philadelphia. 1982 small date bronze, Philadelphia. 1982 large date zinc, Philadelphia. 1982 small date zinc, Philadelphia. 1982 D large date bronze, Denver. 1982 D large date zinc, Denver. 1982 D small date zinc, Denver. Each of these varieties has unique characteristics, and for collectors, assembling a complete set of all 7 is a rewarding challenge. The most famous and valuable of these is the 1982 D small date bronze, which is considered extremely rare. For many years, it was believed that no Denver-minted small date cents were struck in bronze, but examples eventually surfaced, sparking excitement in the numismatic community. Because only a handful are known to exist, the 1982 D small date bronze cent is one of the key rarities of the modern Lincoln cent series, commanding high prices at auction. Mintage totals for 1982 were enormous, as billions of cents were produced to meet the demands of commerce. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of both bronze and zinc cents, while the Denver Mint contributed its own massive output. Proof cents were struck at the San Francisco Mint, as in previous years, and these proofs are identifiable by their S mint mark. The proof cents of 1982, like those of other years, were struck on specially prepared planchets with polished dies, giving them mirror-like fields and frosted design elements. These coins were sold directly to collectors in proof sets and are prized for their high-quality surfaces and sharp details. Within the proof coinage, the 1982 cents are all struck in the copper-plated zinc composition, which adds another layer to the year's transitional story. Errors and die varieties add another level of fascination to the 1982 cent. Because the mint was experimenting with new planchets and working under the pressure of high production, mistakes inevitably occurred. Collectors have discovered double dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, and transitional errors where the wrong composition was used. Transitional errors are especially significant for 1982, because distinguishing between bronze and zinc cents requires attention to weight. A bronze cent weighs about 3.11 grams, while a zinc cent weighs about 2.5 grams. Using a precise scale, collectors can identify whether a 1982 cent is bronze or zinc, and in some cases, rare transitional pieces may appear. This adds an element of detective work and excitement for anyone examining their pocket change or searching through rolls. The 1984 1-cent coin of the United States, part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, is an issue that combines immense mintage, subtle varieties, economic history, and collector intrigue. At first glance, the 1984 cent looks almost identical to countless other Lincoln memorial cents of its era. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln by Victor David Brenner appears on the obverse, while Frank Gasparo's rendering of the Lincoln Memorial is found on the reverse. Yet, beneath this surface familiarity, the 1984 cent embodies important stories of composition, production, and numismatic study that make it a subject of enduring interest. The obverse design remains consistent with the Lincoln cent tradition. Abraham Lincoln's right-facing profile fills the center of the coin, dignified and instantly recognizable. Above his head runs the motto "In God We Trust," to the left is liberty, and to the right is the date 1984. For coins struck at the Denver Mint, a small D mint mark appears below the date. The portrait, originally engraved by Victor David Brenner in 1909, had by 1984 been in use for 75 years, making it one of the most familiar and longest-lasting designs in American coinage history. Over decades, the mint had modified hubs and dies to improve sharpness or extend die life, and so small differences in detail can be observed across years. On 1984 cents, collectors sometimes note slight softness in Lincoln's hair details depending on strike quality, and subtle die polishing lines may also appear. The reverse continues the Lincoln Memorial design introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Frank Gasparo's reverse shows the memorial with its columns, steps, and roofline, flanked by United States of America at the top and 1 cent at the bottom. Between these legends appears the Latin phrase e pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one. A closer look reveals one of the smallest but most meaningful details. Within the central columns of the memorial is the tiny seated figure of Lincoln, echoing the statue from the actual monument in Washington, D.C. This detail makes the Lincoln cent unique in that it shows the same person on both sides of the coin. By 1984, the memorial reverse had been in use for 25 years, and while it remained serviceable and iconic, many collectors already anticipated that a new design would eventually replace it. The composition of the 1984 cent reflects the economic realities of the early 1980s. Prior to 1982, Lincoln cents were made from a bronze alloy consisting of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. However, as copper prices climbed, the cost of producing bronze cents began to exceed their face value, creating an untenable situation for the U.S. Mint. In 1982, the Mint transitioned to a new composition, a core of 99.2% zinc coated with a thin layer of pure copper. These copper-plated zinc cents weigh 2.5 grams compared to the 3.11 grams of their bronze predecessors. By 1984, all circulating cents were made in this copper-plated zinc composition. The changeover was subtle in appearance but significant in economics. The zinc core pennies could be produced at a fraction of the cost, ensuring that the Mint did not lose money on each cent manufactured. For collectors, however, this shift created an enduring divide between the traditional copper cents and the modern zinc cents, with the former often preferred for their heft and durability. Mintage figures for the 1984 cent were immense, as pennies remained the most heavily produced coin in the United States. The The Philadelphia Mint, which used no mint mark, struck well over 8 billion cents. The Denver Mint, identified by its D mint mark, contributed nearly as many. The San Francisco Mint, by this time focused primarily on proof coinage for collectors, struck 1984's proof cents for inclusion in annual proof sets. These proof cents were made using carefully prepared planchets and dies, resulting in mirror-like fields and frosted design elements. As a result, 1984's proofs display exceptional beauty when preserved in pristine condition, and they are popular among Lincoln cent specialists. One of the reasons the 1984 cent attracts attention in the numismatic community is because of notable varieties and errors. The most famous of these is the 1984 doubled die obverse, a dramatic variety in which Lincoln's ear shows strong doubling, creating the appearance of an extra ear. This double ear variety is one of the most recognizable and popular double dies in the entire Lincoln cent series. It was created during the die-making process, when a hubbing misalignment caused design elements to be impressed twice at slightly different angles. Collectors prize this variety because it is bold, visible without magnification, and distinct. Well-preserved examples can command significant premiums, especially in higher mint state grades with full red color. Beyond this major variety, smaller double dies, die cracks, die chips, and plating blisters are also seen on 1984 cents, adding depth to the collecting experience. Errors on 1984 cents occur across many categories. Off-center strikes, in which the design is misaligned relative to the coin's edges, can produce dramatic pieces with portions of the design missing. Clipped planchets, where a section of the blank was cut incorrectly, create coins with curved or straight clips. Broad strikes, die caps, and other striking errors all exist for 1984 cents, and these error coins transform an otherwise common date into a collectible curiosity. Because the mintage was so massive, the number of potential errors is large, and collectors often enjoy searching rolls or bags of 1984 cents for unusual finds. Condition plays a central role in determining the desirability and value of 1984 cents. Most pieces circulated heavily, showing wear on Lincoln's hair, cheek, and jawline, along with flattening of the Lincoln memorial details. Such coins remain worth only face value in circulation. However, uncirculated examples with original mint luster and minimal marks are far scarcer than their enormous mintage numbers might suggest. When graded by professional services, mint state 1984 cents can reach significant values, particularly in grades of MS66 and above. Color designation is another key factor. Copper-plated zinc cents are especially vulnerable to environmental damage, corrosion, and discoloration, making bright red examples difficult to find in the long term. Collectors distinguish between red, RD, red-brown, RB, and brown, BN, with full red cents commanding the highest prices. Proof 1984 cents also follow this pattern, with deep cameo examples in flawless condition being particularly prized. The 1984 cent must also be understood in its historical and economic context. The early 1980s were a time of inflation concerns, fluctuating commodity prices, and debates about the usefulness of the cent itself. Critics argued that the penny no longer held purchasing power, while supporters noted its role in maintaining price points and public familiarity. The mint's transition to copper-plated zinc in 1982 had been a direct response to these pressures, and by 1984, the new cents were widely accepted, though not without detractors who disliked their lighter weight and tendency to corrode. Still, the Lincoln cent remained an ingrained part of American commerce, and billions continued to circulate through pockets, purses, and cash registers. From a collector's standpoint, the 1984 cent offers multiple avenues of interest. Beginners may enjoy simply finding examples in circulation, while advanced numismatists focus on high-grade mint state coins, proofs, or the famous double die variety. The search for error coins adds another layer of excitement, while specialists in Lincoln cents often study die states, plating quality, and strike sharpness. Assembling a complete set of Lincoln cents that includes the 1984 issues is a goal for many, and the coin remains an essential part of any modern collection. The 1-cent coin of 1988, part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, is one of the most studied small-denomination coins of the late 20th century. At first glance, The 1988 penny appears to be just another copper-colored coin with the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Billions were produced, and most people handled them daily without ever giving them a second thought. Yet, beneath this ordinary surface, the 1988 cent holds stories of composition, minting technology, varieties, rare transitional issues, and the broader history of American coinage. Collectors have long been fascinated with the 1988 penny, not because of its face value, but because of the richness of its details, errors, and varieties that elevate it far above its humble worth. The obverse of the 1988 cent features the long-established design by Victor David Brenner, first introduced in 1909 to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Lincoln faces right, his gaze calm and dignified, his profile deeply etched into American cultural memory. The motto "In God We Trust" stretches above his head along the coin's rim. To the left of the bust is the word liberty, and to the right appears the date 1988. On pieces struck at the Denver Mint, a small D mint mark is seen just below the date, while Philadelphia issues of this era bore no mint mark. This portrait, despite being almost 80 years old by 1988, remained instantly recognizable to millions of Americans and was considered a symbol of stability in U.S. coinage. Collectors, however, notice subtle details that vary from year to year, such as sharpness of strike, die wear, and even small differences in engraving hubs used at the mint. The reverse of the 1988 cent continues to display Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design, first introduced in 1959. The memorial is presented in full frontal view, complete with its columns, roofline, and steps. Above it are the words United States of America, while below is the denomination 1 cent. Just above the memorial, between these inscriptions, lies the motto E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one. One of the most charming aspects of this reverse is the tiny seated statue of Lincoln visible between the central columns of the memorial, a detail that means Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin. This design had been in place for nearly 3 decades by 1988 and would continue until 2008, making it one of the most familiar reverses in modern American coinage. On 1988 cents, collectors often examine the sharpness of the steps and columns to judge strike quality, since heavy production sometimes resulted in weaker detail. The composition of the 1988 cent reflects the major change that had occurred earlier in the decade. Until 1982, cents were struck from a bronze alloy consisting of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, with a weight of 3.11 grams. However, rising copper prices made the old composition too costly, and beginning mid-1982 the mint transitioned to copper-plated zinc coins weighing 2.5 grams. By 1988, the zinc-based composition was firmly established, and every cent produced that year used this format. Each coin consists of a nearly pure zinc core, plated with a thin layer of copper to retain the traditional appearance. To the public, the change was hardly noticeable, but to collectors it marked a dividing line in the Lincoln series. Bronze cents are valued for their durability and rich red-brown patina, while zinc cents are known for being lighter, more prone to corrosion, and subject to plating issues such as bubbling or peeling. The 1988 cent, therefore, belongs squarely in the zinc era, and understanding its characteristics requires an appreciation of the challenges this composition introduced. Mintage totals for the 1988 cent were massive, reflecting the enormous demand for pennies in everyday commerce. The Philadelphia Mint struck more than 5 billion cents without mint marks, while the Denver Mint produced a nearly equal number with the D mint mark. The San Francisco Mint, by this time dedicated mainly to proof coinage, struck 1988 as proof cents for inclusion in annual proof sets sold to collectors. These proof coins were struck on specially prepared planchets using polished dies, producing mirror-like fields and frosted design elements. The contrast between frosted Lincoln and the reflective background creates a striking appearance in deep cameo proofs, which are especially valued by collectors when preserved in flawless condition. Because the proof sets were sold directly to collectors and carefully stored, many proof 1988 cents survive in high grades, though the most pristine are still highly sought after. One of the most fascinating elements of the 1988 cent lies in its varieties. In particular, the 1988 Lincoln cent is known for the famous 1988 double die obverse, and the intriguing 1988 transitional reverse variety. The double die obverse is a result of the die receiving more than one impression from the hub at slightly different angles, causing noticeable doubling in certain parts of the design. On the most significant 1988 double die, collectors can see doubling in areas such as Liberty and I In God We Trust, making it a desirable find. These coins, though not as dramatic as the legendary 1955 or 1972 double dies, still command premiums and generate excitement among roll searchers. The 1988 transitional reverse variety is even more famous. This variety, known as the 1988 reverse of 1989, occurs when a 1988 obverse die was paired with a reverse hub intended for 1989. The differences between the two reverses are subtle but important. On the 1989 reverse, the letters in America are more widely spaced, and the G in the designer's initials FG is closer to the Lincoln Memorial. A small number of 1988 cents were struck with this 1989 style reverse, creating a rare transitional variety. Collectors highly prize these coins because they represent a mistake during the mint's die preparation process and because they are far scarcer than regular 1988 cents. The discovery of these transitional reverses generated significant attention in the numismatic community, and today they remain among the most desirable modern Lincoln cent varieties. Beyond these major varieties, the 1988 cent is also known for smaller anomalies and mint errors. Plating problems are especially common due to the copper-plated zinc composition. Tiny bubbles can form on the surface as the copper layer separates from the zinc core, creating raised blisters. In severe cases, the copper plating may peel away, exposing the silvery zinc beneath. While many of these coins are considered damaged rather than collectible, dramatic or unusual plating errors can attract collector interest. Other errors include off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, and cuds. Each error transforms an otherwise ordinary cent into a numismatic curiosity. The sheer scale of production in 1988 meant that such errors were inevitable, and roll searchers still enjoy hunting for them. Condition and grading are vital in evaluating 1988 cents. Most pieces circulated heavily, showing significant wear. On worn examples, Lincoln's hair becomes smooth, the cheek and jawline flatten, and the steps of the memorial are indistinct. These worn coins remain worth only a cent. Uncirculated examples, however, retain their original mint luster. When graded professionally, high-end mint state coins can reach significant premiums, especially those with full red coloration and minimal marks. Copper is prone to toning and spotting, and zinc-based cents often show unattractive surface issues, making flawless red coins scarce. Collectors distinguish between red, RD, red-brown, RB, and brown, BN, designations, with red coins being the most valuable. Proof 1988 cents are also evaluated based on strike quality and cameo contrast, with the most beautiful deep cameo examples being the most prized. The historical and cultural context of the 1988 cent provides further insight into its significance. By the late 1980s, inflation and changing consumer habits had further eroded the purchasing power of the penny. Many questioned its continued usefulness, yet the mint continued to produce billions each year. Businesses relied on it for pricing psychology. Items priced at $1.99 instead of $2 depended on the existence of the penny. For millions of Americans, the penny remained a familiar part of daily life, used in transactions, saved in jars, or given to children as an introduction to money. At the same time, serious coin collectors recognized the penny as an opportunity to study varieties, minting technology, and history. The 1988 cent, therefore, is both an everyday object and a collectible artifact. For numismatists, the 1988 cent offers multiple paths of interest. Beginners can collect circulated examples and learn to recognize mint marks, designs, and varieties. Intermediate collectors may seek out uncirculated rolls, high-grade singles, or proof coins. Advanced specialists pursue the famous transitional reverse variety, the double die obverse, or dramatic mint errors. Some collectors focus on plating errors unique to zinc cents, while others build typesets that include both bronze and zinc cents, using the 1988 issue to represent the latter. Because the Lincoln series is one of the most widely collected in the world, the 1988 cent holds a secure place in countless albums and collections. The 1-cent coin of 1989, part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, represents a fascinating moment in modern American coinage. Although at first glance it seems like just another common Lincoln Memorial cent, the 1,989 penny carries layers of historical, economic, and numismatic significance. Billions were minted, yet collectors study them closely for their varieties, mint errors, proof additions, and preservation in high grades. To understand the 1989 cent, it is important to examine its design, composition, minting process, mintage totals, varieties, errors, and the role it plays within the broader Lincoln cent series and American coinage history. The obverse of the 1989 cent displays the enduring portrait of Abraham Lincoln created by Victor David Brenner in 1909. This right-facing bust of the 16th president had been in continuous use for 80 years by the time 1989 cents were struck, making it one of the longest-lasting designs in U.S. coinage. Above Lincoln's head appears the motto "In God We Trust." To the left of his portrait is the word liberty, and to the right is the date 1989. 4 coins struck at the Denver Mint. The D mint mark is positioned just beneath the date. The design, simple yet powerful, honors Lincoln's legacy while serving as a constant reminder of America's Civil War history and the abolition of slavery. On well-struck 1989 cents, details in Lincoln's hair, beard, and clothing remain sharp, though weaker strikes can show softness in these features. The reverse of the coin features Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959 to mark the sesquicentennial of Lincoln's birth. The memorial is depicted in careful architectural detail, with United States of America arching above, the motto E pluribus unum centered below, and the denomination 1 cent placed boldly at the bottom. One of the most interesting aspects of this design is that, if viewed closely, the tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial can be seen, making the cent unique in American coinage by showing the same figure on both sides. Collectors often pay attention to the sharpness of the reverse strike, particularly the clarity of the steps and columns of the memorial. On 1989 cents, die wear and plating quality sometimes affect these details, and as a result, high-grade examples with crisp reverses are more desirable. The composition of the 1989 cent reflects the economic adjustments made earlier in the decade. Since mid-1982, Lincoln cents had been struck primarily from copper-plated zinc, rather than the traditional bronze alloy used since 1909. The shift occurred because rising copper prices had made the older bronze cents too costly to produce. By 1981, the metal content of a penny was nearly equal to or greater than its face value. To solve this, the U.S. Mint introduced a new composition of 97.5% zinc with a thin outer layer of copper plating. These coins weigh 2.5 grams compared to the 3.11 grams of earlier bronze cents. By 1989, this composition was firmly established, and all circulating pennies of that year were struck in copper-plated zinc. This change was largely invisible to the public, as the coins retained their copper color, but collectors distinguish between copper and zinc cents as a major dividing line in the Lincoln series. Mintage totals for the 1989 cent were extremely high, reflecting the cent's role as the most widely used denomination in American commerce. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 7 billion cents without mint marks, while the Denver Mint struck more than 5 billion marked with a D. The San Francisco Mint produced proof coins for collectors, bearing the S mint mark. These proofs were struck on specially prepared planchets using polished dies, resulting in mirror-like fields and frosted design elements. Proof 1989 S cents, especially those graded as deep cameo examples, are highly prized in pristine condition. Despite these immense mintages, condition scarcity ensures that not all 1989 cents are equal in value or desirability. One of the most compelling aspects of the 1989 cent lies in its varieties and errors. While the design itself remained consistent, small die differences and mistakes at the mint created collectible variations. Among these are double dies, where design elements such as the date, lettering, or Lincoln's profile appear doubled due to misalignment during die creation. The 1989 double die obverse varieties, while not as dramatic as those of earlier years like 1955 or 1972, still attract attention from specialists. Other varieties include repunched mint marks on Denver issues, where the D appears doubled from multiple punchings into the die. These varieties are studied in detail by Lincoln cent specialists who catalog each known example. Mint errors from 1989 add further intrigue. Because billions of coins were struck that year, mistakes were inevitable. Errors include off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing due to misaligned planchets. Clipped planchets, where blanks were cut improperly. Broad strikes without full collars, and die cracks or cuds, where broken dies leave raised metal on the coin. Plating errors are especially associated with zinc cents, as the copper layer sometimes separates, bubbles, or fails to cover the zinc core fully. Collectors often encounter 1989 cents with plating blisters, a characteristic flaw of this composition. While common as minor imperfections, dramatic plating errors with large exposed zinc areas can be particularly desirable to specialists. Grading and condition remain essential in evaluating 1989 cents. Most circulated examples show where, with Lincoln's cheek and jawline worn smooth, hair details faded, and reverse steps and columns flattened. These are worth only face value. Uncirculated examples with original red luster are far scarcer and attract collector interest. Professional grading services evaluate these coins on a scale from MS-60 to MS-70, with MS-65 and higher being especially collectible. Because copper-plated zinc cents are more prone to spotting, corrosion, and discoloration, finding a true red mint state 1989 cent is not easy despite the huge mintage. Red-brown and brown examples are more common, but they command lower premiums. Proof 1989 cents also rely heavily on surface quality, with the most beautiful deep cameo pieces valued significantly higher than those with clouded or spotted surfaces. The cultural and economic context of the 1989 cent adds another layer of meaning. The late 1980s in the United States were marked by technological change, globalization, and debates about inflation and money supply. The cent itself had lost much of its purchasing power by this time, barely able to buy even the smallest items in stores. Critics questioned whether the denomination still had a role, but tradition, psychological pricing, and public attachment ensured its continued survival. Billions of pennies continued to be produced each year, and the Lincoln design remained a familiar fixture in everyday life. For children, pennies were still often the first coins handled, saved in jars, or placed into vending machines. In this way, the 1989 cent carries both national and personal significance. From a collector's standpoint, the 1989 cent provides multiple avenues of exploration. Beginners can easily find them in circulation, while advanced numismatists hunt for high-grade mint state examples, proof deep cameos, dramatic errors, and varieties like double dies and repunched mint marks. The year's massive production ensures a wealth of material to study, yet the challenges of preservation and condition rarity mean that outstanding pieces are not common. The zinc composition adds a layer of complexity, as the coins are less stable than bronze issues and require careful storage to avoid environmental damage. For series specialists assembling complete sets of Lincoln cents, the 1989 issues, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, are all necessary components.